Welcome to the Vault Podcast and Reviews, where music still matters. You can check out all our shows at YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Podomatic. Please rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. Also, make sure to check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you like what we're doing and you'd like to contribute to help us keep the show going, check out patreon.com/thevault. Welcome to the first ever 3-person review. And hopefully there's going to be a lot more of these. Yeah. Today we're going to be checking out Boys for Pele by Tori Amos. I was really excited about doing this album because I remember listening to it in the mid-90s. It's been a long time since I listened to it. This was a request from Jessamine, who's with us today. Say hi.
Hello.
This is also her first review tonight, along with it being our first 3-person review, so that's cool.
I'm going to have to do some quick math I got to get my calculator on my phone ready. Okay, it's ready. It's ready to go, so I can do some fractions with our ratings here.
I know that it's Jessamine's, but I had never really listened to Tori Amos before. Like, I knew the name, I don't think I'd ever heard her music. So, like, when you guys said Tori Amos, like, the first kind of people that popped into my head were, like, Fiona Apple, right? That's her? Yeah, I don't know why. It was that kind of stuff.
It's all that same era, yeah. Like,
it's piano rock.
Well, it's just in the mid-90s, there was like this...
Hers was a lot cleaner.
Email, like Fiona Apple, I have Natalie Merchant and Bjork down. That's like, those are just names that came out of my head.
Meredith Brooks.
That they were all just in that set. They're different, obviously, but it's not. I just remember all of them coming out. It seems like around the same time. So yeah, you're close.
I mean, I even like made note that for some reason she kind of sounds like a bad girl, even in some of her songs. So I googled it. Didn't find anything. I expected to find like a Nancy Kerrigan scandal or something. I don't know why, but but that's why I want to start it, because I had no idea.
And the cover art on this, she's sitting there with a gun in her hand, like a shotgun. So I mean, how maybe you were onto something there.
That's what I'm saying. I googled it though. I didn't find anything. I tried.
On the Google machine.
Yeah.
Did either of you look at the other liner note photographs by any chance?
I did not, no.
That whole series of photographs is very interesting because one of those sparked a ton of controversy with this album because she's in that same rocking chair that she's sitting in with that gun, only she has an open shirt and there is a pig suckling at her breast. And
nice.
It's a very interesting image, which caused a ton of controversy around the album in general. Not sure what, if anything, it has to do with the album, but
that's what I was going to ask, if it had like some kind of statement behind it or something.
There's just a lot of weird stuff in the 90s. That's all I can say.
Yeah, Tori intentionally leaves much of what she writes exclusively for interpretation, and she does that on purpose.
So, Robbie, I'll jump back to you. First impressions?
I was very surprised. Like I said, I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of had an idea of who she was, but she's an excellent artist. I mean, she's a great singer. She's super, super creative. She's definitely not afraid to be different, to be outside the box. I mean, so many of these songs are completely different. None of them, I won't say none of them, but not a lot of them sound the same. she keeps it original, keeps you on your toes about it. So I like that a lot.
Well, and 18 tracks. I mean, 18 tracks of music that's a variety of styles and sounds. I mean, that's saying something. And the other thing I failed to mention, this peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200. So.
In 96?
Yep. Yes.
Oh, they were in competition with West Side Connection.
Tori Amos and West Side Connection. That was a bad dad joke.
It also hit number 2 on the UK Top 40, and it actually is her most successful album to date, really.
This is the one I can remember playing mostly on MTV. Yeah, when MTV was a thing. And radio and any other kind of publicity like that. So.
Yeah, well, I'll get right into one of the songs that I really dug right off the bat. Mr. Zebra. I thought that was super cool. It was a little short, but for some reason that one really stuck out to me with all the pianos and the horns. I I thought it was it was a really cool song. It was interesting, you know.
Jessamine, you can give your thoughts.
Well, I'm completely. I will start off by saying I am completely biased toward this album, because this was the first Tori Amos album that I listened to, and from top to bottom, I had never heard lyrical compositions on top of musical compositions that sounded like this. It really blew my mind.
I would say that still stands true.
Yes, and it blew my mind, and this may be taking a step out on a limb, and I will bravely do it. It blew my mind the same way that 2112 by Rush blew my mind.
Yes, I love that album.
Just in the fact that what's going on in this album, what was going on in that album, really had never gone on before. And even with Tori Amos albums, you know, this was her third studio album. She had Little Earthquakes in 1990. She had Under the Pink in 1993, and you know, those were both controlled. You know, those were both controlled by her record label. And this was the first album that she was actually given control, in the sense that, you know, not only did she write every track top to bottom, including all of the orchestral arrangements, but she also produced the album. So it was exactly, and she said before, as far as how it was done, it was that darkness behind it. They recorded it in an Irish church, which I find incredibly ironic with all of the just religious conflict and the sometimes incredibly graphic sexual images that she has in her music, but then it's coupled with that, you know, that air of a cathedral sound and that gospel sound to it. And so, you know, looking at the album as a whole, I mean, it really was something that was very different than what I had heard. And obviously it's not often that you hear essentially Baroque piano and harpsichord arrangements in any kind of music that's going to be released on any kind of mass scale to anyone.
That's what I was going to say too. Having the harpsichord specifically, and then there was just interesting variety of instruments to make up so many different sounds to make this album completely original. Every single song was pretty much totally different.
I mean, her style is all over the place, you know. She even had like a Portishead feel, you know, in a couple of songs.
On some songs, yeah, that's a good point.
You know, I really liked it.
Beauty Queen and Horses, which was technically the first track. Minimal music used, and just emphasize on her vocal talents. I mean, and one thing I also liked about most of this album, and this is weird, anybody that's listened to these shows probably knows that I'm going to say this, but this album to me just has this really dark, depressive feel to the whole thing, and I absolutely love it. I'm not depressed, but I just love depressing, kind of downer music. And
you just hate happy music.
I don't like happy music. I do not, because I just, it feels fake, I guess. Well, I don't know. Like I could get down with like some Bay City Rollers and some Bee Gees and stuff. That's pretty.
What about like Temptations and?
Yeah, I can handle that stuff. Yeah, that's not too bad. But yeah, that's what really got me with this album. Going back and listening to it again, is just how kind of dark it is, really. I mean, what else do you guys think?
Yes, and also too, something to kind of point out. I don't know if this is something that's popped up on either of your radars, but the tracks, you know, on the subject of albums that are really made to as a top to bottom composition, not a collection of singles, as it were. She designed this track listing with the idea that it was going to be on double vinyl.
Interesting.
So you'll notice that every 4 or 5 songs, like you notice the very first track is incredibly mellow. Mr. Zebra is the first track on the B side, so it's also very mellow, goes into that, and it goes through that all the way through it, because she wanted it to be specifically seen as, you know, 4 fairly distinct collections, kind of all there together.
And I could see that too, you know.
Now that you say that, yeah.
That's a lot of really good background information on this album.
That's what happens when you ramble.
I love this album.
That's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I think is of note, and I think this, as far as if this as quoted was her goal from the beginning. I think she accomplished it. One of Tori's quotes about what she was trying to do was to, quote, create a contemporary and classical record from a songwriter's perspective. And I really like the way that was worded, because I think that's exactly what this album is.
Yeah. It's definitely an excellent album. Like I said, I didn't know what Tori Amos was all about. I was very surprised with the variety of instruments and the changing in styles and all that. I love that. I love when an artist doesn't just do the same thing. Like Tech Nine will do that different on every album, and it takes a lot to do that, because what if you do something somebody doesn't like, But if you're a true artist, you don't care. You put it out anyway.
Right. And I notice, and this is an odd parallel to make, but someone I have always really looked up to in a literary sense is Maya Angelou. And looking at her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and where that book is autobiographical about her, very difficult time, not only, being raped, being beaten, having this awful, childhood. And Tori had those same elements going on in her life, and she was also she's I believe the daughter of a pastor, and some of her life choices caused her to have some very conflicting views of the church from a fairly young age.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing those kinds of struggle kind of reflected through an entire an entire album like that is incredibly vulnerable.
It
and
is.
it can't, and that's and to me, yes, it's sad, because sad things and traumatic things and horrible things happen, and for so many of us, that's where we deal with those things. And she's written a lot of commentary, and that's I love that she operates that way, and that she is so lyrically, even through the metaphor, just incredibly naked in front of her audience in this album.
Yeah, that's awesome. You should be like a Tori Amos spokesperson, because you make me want to bump my number up on my score here.
And honestly, I'll tell you, I'll tell everybody this. Last night, I messaged Robbie and I said, Have you listened to Boys for Pele yet? He said, not yet, I'm going to. I said, listen to it late.
I listened to it at like 3:30, I think.
And I think in that, at that time of night, just in that headspace where most people are at that time of night, I think that's a really good time to initially kind of take it in, because it is incredibly dark. It is incredibly thought-provoking. And I mean, considering she also admittedly was experimenting or having some, having a period of time where she was using psychedelic drugs, apparently, in the inspiration to these. I've read that 2 or 3 different places. And that also makes sense as far as with, Mr. Zebra,
right,
Ratatouille, Strychnine, things that, images of that, which I think in that song in particular, Mr. Zebra, the Ratatouille, Strychnine, and in the actual lyrics, those words are both capitalized as if that's perhaps a person, which, to me seems like a jambalaya of poison. And I think we've all known people that would fit that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jambalaya of poison. And I find that image in that song, even though it is very short, to be incredibly powerful for that reason.
That's cool.
So what negatives do you guys have about this album then?
Man, my negatives are always your positives. I put that, it's a little depressing, but in that sense too, that's fine, because she's obviously, you can feel the pain, and I love that in music. And not that it made me depressed, but that was just really one of the only things I could nitpick out of the album, because I mean, whether I liked it or not, it was super creative, and I can't take away from that whatsoever. So I put that, it's a little depressing, but like I said, I mean, she was going through that, she's been through it, she was living it, and she's telling her story, and that's all you can ask out of an artist,
Jessamine, what do you got?
As much as I love metaphor, the metaphor in this album as a whole, I would say, is in general incredibly inaccessible. It can be so far out there almost that I would say that some people would have, and even myself in certain songs, I have a hard time deriving a very personal meaning from it, just because the metaphor goes beyond what I'm relating to, and I can relate to some very odd metaphors, but there are other ones that perhaps don't grab me in that same fashion. So that is a criticism there. And then I would say my other criticism of this album would be that it was remixed to death.
Oh gosh, yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording.
And I feel like it was remixed. I mean, so much so, Professional Widow literally had 10 authorized remixes of that one song. And so I feel that what the perhaps, cultural footprint that it left was more geared toward those club arrangements rather than this incredible, classically structured, just filled with sonic landscapes all over it and this amazing imagery, and lost in a club remix.
They almost kind of took away from it by doing that, yeah.
And I love a good club remix. And that's something too, is that I love a good club remix, but it's just when that's all you're doing to all of those songs, that's what people are going to remember, and I feel that's selling this album way short.
And especially since, I mean, it's, the way you explained her putting in the thought as far as it being a double album or a double vinyl and all of that, you'd think she'd look at it like her masterpiece, and I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I wouldn't let anybody take it. I mean, I guess she might not have owned the masters somehow. I guess that can happen. I don't know. But you wouldn't think she would just give it up.
Professional Widow, my favorite song on here. I absolutely love this, and I have a story behind it. I was familiar with Tori Amos, period. Like I said, she would, other songs besides this album, you would hear occasionally on alternative radio or MTV2 specifically, because they would play different things. And I heard this song on the Escape from LA soundtrack, which we will review down the road after we get into our straight-up podcast about soundtracks. But this song was thrown in the middle with, like, Ministry and White Zombie and Civ and the Toadies and all kinds of other Deftones were on there. Tool was on there. So when I hear this song in the middle of it, I was like, wow, this is different. And I liked it at the time. Now, going back and listening to it once I realized what it is, I started listening to it again, and at its core, this sounds like 70s hard rock. I mean, it's got this 70s hard rock feel to it, with obviously better vocals than what a lot of those bands had. So that track by far stood out to me. And then as far as my negatives, just, some of the songs don't really relate to me, I guess you could say, from a music standpoint. I don't care so much about the lyrics, but musically, like, I would just kind of get bored with some of them. And it's funny, like, most of the ones people would think might be boring were maybe the one, like, the opening track, Beauty Queen Horses, it was very minimal music, but it just gave this mood overall for the song that I absolutely loved. So that was all my negatives. So you guys got anything else before we jump into the rating on this?
No, I want to say thanks to Jessamine for providing us with all the background information that one could possibly need on the album. That's awesome.
Is that okay?
No, that's great.
Yeah, any factoids. We love factoids.
I'm a super nerd. I watch movies with commentary. Like
most of these. Yeah, Robbie, we've watched movies with commentary together. I know how you roll.
Several times.
Yeah, I like a lot of those factoids are off my head, and then today and yesterday, as I was kind of taking some notes, I was like, oh man, that's so awesome.
Right.
One other. Can I talk really quick about one other song?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the whole album I'm in love with, but a song in particular that I think does not necessarily get the credit it deserves. It wasn't a single. It just kind of hangs out. It's track 8, Muhammad, My Friend. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Tori's music in general are just her overall themes of not only religious conflict, but also looking at femininity versus masculinity, and just the balance between your belief and perhaps faith and religion. And Muhammad, my friend, is a really interesting song, and I've always it's been looked at a lot, and I find it really fascinating as far as the the line being, we both know it was a girl back in Bethlehem, and really she's looking at how females have been neglected in popularized religion over time. And in this song, she's straight out exploring perhaps the female element of God, perhaps in a Kevin Smith, Dogma, Alanis Morissette kind of style.
Just fixing to say that.
But what I really like about this song is that I think, again, very metaphorically, I think she's criticizing people when they hide in religion, and that's not to look at any kind of personal relationship a person has with a higher power, but actually hiding in the structure of religion. And kind of talks a little bit about when she says, if I lose my Cracker Jacks at the tidal wave, I got a place in the Pope's rubber robe. Just kind of looking at that in a sense where well, it's fine because I've got friends in the right places, and all of that imagery is really interesting to me, and that's a song that I always encourage people to just listen to and to just think about, and whether or not a person agrees with it or not. I find it a really thought-provoking song, and toward the end when she says, I've never seen light, but I sure have seen gold. I love that image, just because obviously you would think the opposite would be true, just light being in that sense of the sun being available during daylight hours, right. Gold not necessarily being available, but looking at it in that deeper sense of, I've never seen that true truth, but I've seen a lot of greed, I've seen a lot of materialism, and I love the imagery in that song, and I think it slides under the radar a lot, and it's one I always like to call a little bit of attention to.
Nice.
All right, so we're jumping into the ratings. 1 star being the worst, 5 stars being the best. Robbie, what do you got?
I gave it a 3.5. Pretty good album. It's not necessarily my style. I thought that 3.5 was...
Well, obviously, it's above average for you, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I've really dug the album. It's not something that I think I would put on repeat, or listen to often. But I did dig it. I did like it. So,
Jessamine, what do you got?
I would say from an all-around perspective, not just my own bias for this album, but in general what it does, I would say 4 stars. Missing that last one just because of the inaccessible lyrics with too much metaphor, and sometimes those images that she puts forth in her songs are sometimes perhaps a little too graphic.
I also have 4 stars, mostly just missing that last star because some of the songs just didn't grab me. Lyrically, I was kind of lost in the first place just because I generally don't listen to lyrics. But some of the songs just, I'm not going to say they were boring or not creative or anything, because I think as a whole this album is fantastic, obviously. Yep. But they just didn't grab me, so I couldn't give it anything higher than a 4. But it gets, the overall just depressive feel of this album and the instruments, the amount of instruments used on it is what really got me. So, any final thoughts from you guys?
It was good. It was a good album. Thank you, Jessamine, again. I love behind-the-scenes stuff, so that's cool.
Keep bringing the factoids.
Well, and I really enjoyed. I enjoyed having this discussion with you guys. Just it's not often that I get to talk, especially about Tori Amos with people, and I always enjoy different perspectives. So this was awesome.
Awesome. All right, and we're going to have you on some more reviews down the road. And guys, make sure to check out all of her stuff, all of Robbie's stuff, which we will provide links below. And then don't forget to check out everything from The Vault. Subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, and Podomatic. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And until next time, see ya.